responsible. David was able to give generously because he was wealthy, because God said, I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff to take care of. Don't forget though, I'm going to give you a lot, but don't forget it's mine. And I'm giving it to you to take care of. And before all of us freak out, it's not a new concept for us. How many of you, when you were a child, had your own room? I got my own room at a certain age. How many of you put a sign on your door that looks something like this? And I know that with the lights it's hard to see, but this one says get out, or keep out. This one says boys only, and this one says no girls come in. Okay? I had a sign on my room that said, Eddie's room, no one allowed without permission. And, you know, I just, you know, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot. If you were lucky enough to have your own room, it was a big deal when you were a kid, and you treated it that way. And I want to ask you, any of this sound familiar? Mom, he keeps coming in my room. Get out of my room. My room, my rules. And that is just from my house this last week, my daughter and my son. So why is it, because I said Eddie's room an awful lot, why is it my parents could go in my room whenever they wanted to and mess with my stuff? It was my room. Why did my mother have the power to make me clean my room? It's mine. She shouldn't have the power to do any of that. My room, my rules. But as much as I argued about cleaning my room when I was a child, boy, this sounds like marriage, doesn't it? As much as I argued about cleaning my room as a child, I always did it. Do you know why? Because it wasn't my room. It wasn't your room. You just managed the room, and when you didn't manage your room very well, your parents made you manage it better, or else they were going to take some more of your things that weren't really yours, that you were re-managing for them, away from you until you cleaned up their room for you. Confused yet? Our stuff is not our stuff. As adults, we learn this too. Every year, the city of Winnipeg presents you with a property tax bill. Okay? You are paying the city of Winnipeg for the privilege of taking care of their land, so to speak. And if you think it's your property, stop paying your property taxes, and we'll see whose property it is. It's not yours. You don't own anything. We know this is true in most realms of life, but when it comes to God owns it all, we get very nervous. It isn't new. If there's anybody who can legally take what you think is yours, then you don't really own it. Legally, there is a system in place that if we do certain things, pretty much everything we have can be confiscated. If we really think about it, even in this materialistic world, we don't own a whole lot of anything. I had just, going back to the story of my room, I had just turned 13 years old, and I got one of the greatest birthday presents a 13-year-old could ask for. My parents decided to give me my own room. They had converted my father's upstairs office into my room, my bedroom. I was thrilled. About a week later, my dad came into my room and asked me to clean my room. And I said, what any normal, bold-faced, fresh-faced 13-year-old would. Said, no. No. This is my room, Dad. You didn't even knock. I'll clean it when I want to. Now, my dad is a very smart man. He didn't say anything. He walked away, and I thought I was the victor. I had a room. Later that night, after supper, I went up to my room, and it was locked. And on my door was a simple sign that read like this: Dear Eddie, when you are ready to clean your room, please come see me for my key. Love, Dad. This room is my room. It's not your room. It's not your land. Big newsflash from God to all of us. It belongs to Him. You're not an owner. You're a manager of what God has given you. Not only does everything belong to God, but the verses say everything is distributed by God, and He distributes as He sees fit. It's not just because someone works hard or is smart, and you gotta be honest with me. You have met some very wealthy people that are very, very stupid, haven't you? Okay, God says I give some people high IQ, I give some people a lot of money, I give some people good looks, I give some people not so good looks. God is not fair. He doesn't claim to be fair in this regard. He distributes gifts as He sees fit. We may not like that, but it's a reality. And the reason why this is so important is that when you embrace this truth, when you realize that you're a manager of what He's given you and not an owner, you will quit feeling guilty for what you have or anxious about what you don't have. A financial planner never feels guilty for handling a lot of money. They feel responsible. I'm going to say that again, just in case. A financial planner, a manager of other people's money, never feels guilty about having too much or anxious about having too little. They feel, what's the word? Responsible. When you realize that you're a manager and not an owner, you will behave like David and the people of Israel. Oh, I can't believe that God would be so gracious to give me what He's given, to manage this money. I don't feel guilty or anxious. I feel responsible. I feel blessed. And whether God blesses you with a handful, an armful, a boatload, a truckload, a fleet of trucks, doesn't matter. The person with the little and the person with a lot are both stewards of what God has given them. We're all stewards of somebody else's stuff. And I'm telling you, when you embrace this truth, when it becomes a deeply held belief about money, you make different decisions because you feel more responsible. And when you become more responsible with the money that God has given you, you know what? You're going to have more.
Amen.
How many of you would like to have more? It's a no-brainer. I know all of your hands are going up in your heads. How many of you would like to have a lot more? Well, there's fewer hands going up because you don't want to admit it, but your hands are all going up. Come on. When you sit down with a financial planner, one of the first questions they ask you is, what are your goals? A financial planner doesn't tell you what his goals are for your money. Let me give you a real neat definition of stewardship this morning. Stewardship is protecting and growing the owner's assets with fierce intensity. That's the kind of money manager I want for my money. Someone who protects and grows the owner's assets with fierce intensity. God says we're supposed to be stewards of the money that He has given to us to manage. Can you say you're protecting and growing the assets He's given you with fierce intensity? It's another sub-question this morning. You want to be such a good and responsible money manager so that God will trust you with more. The question is not how much you have, it's what are you doing with it? Not how much money you have, but what are you doing with the money that God has given you to manage? And listen, the outcome of realizing you're a steward and not an owner is that you'll be better off financially Your family will be better off financially. God's kingdom will be better off financially. Your wants will decrease and your contentment will increase. Check it out. If I had a little red button up here, and I said, anyone who comes down here and presses this button will be more content with less stuff, would you come and press it? Of course you would. And if I said anyone whose family comes up to press this red button will be content with less stuff, I know my family would come up and press the button. Because when you think like a steward, you experience contentment. You don't decide to be content. It comes along with this belief, this deeply held belief that you have about money. It begins to happen over time. Spending and saving never bring contentment. You can save hundreds of thousands of dollars and still not be content, because that's just a decision. Contentment comes when I truly begin to think like a manager and embrace the truth that God, that it all belongs to Him, and He's the one who has distributed it as He sees fit. Now, what would be different in your life if you thought that way? If you thought of yourself more as a manager of God's money, less of responsible for yours, but responsible for His, you wouldn't worry about the money. You would maybe perhaps invest some of God's money in stocks, but it's God's money that's invested in stocks, not yours, and you're responsible to manage that money. You wouldn't have to be driven crazy by want to. You would have more money because you would manage it more responsibly. I am not pointing at anyone in this crowd, and I'm not judging about going to McPhillips Street Station, which just so happens to be the closest casino to this church. But you can go there with $20 and play a game of blackjack or roulette and bet $20 and you can win or lose. Supposedly it's fun. I don't know. Now, I might take an evening, if I was thinking about it as a person, not me, but let's say right, and if it was my money, have no problem. But I don't know if I would take Florence's money. You know, maybe she's giving it to me to buy a Bible. I'm just saying Bible because it sounds good because I'm a pastor in a church. You give me $20 and I think, well, you know what? If I win another 20 with Florence's 20, I'll be up 20. I'll have $20 and I can get her a Bible for 20. But the problem is I'm not gambling with my money, I'm gambling with yours. So I'm probably not going to do it because you're going to lose respect for me and you're never going to let me manage your money again. If you manage God's money with responsibility, then what do you think the chances are He's going to bless you with more? Pretty good! And if you manage God's money irresponsibly, what do you think are the chances that He's going to bless you with more? Pastor Ed, I don't know. Do you know that the wealthiest Christians that I know are all over this principle? They know what they have is not theirs. So instead of worrying about it, they manage it because they feel responsible for it and blessed by it. They give and they give and they give, and then all of a sudden they got more and more and more. I want to tell you about a guy. I'm related to this guy. He's my uncle. And about 10 years ago, he threw a banquet to raise funds to build a village for orphan children in Africa because of the AIDS virus. It was a $500 a plate banquet at the Hotel Fort Garry. And they got a thank you letter from the Prime Minister at the time and all kinds of stuff. And it was glitz. It was like a glitzy banquet, $500 a plate. A famous country musician was singing. Manitoba's high society was there, and my uncle invited me and paid for my $500 because he knew a struggling seminary student didn't have $500 to his name. And he and my aunt had agreed that they would match all the donations that came in that evening. And they had budgeted $250,000 because they had anticipated $250,000 would come in. So altogether, $500,000 would be raised. So they had decided that of the money that God had given them, that they were going to give away $250,000 that night. The only problem was that $500,000 came in that night. Now, $500,000 is a lot more than $250,000 for those of you who, are relatively wealthy here. You would think they would have said, we're going to decide what to do and we'll get back to you in a couple of days. But my uncle got up at the end of the banquet, went straight to the microphone and said, we are so thrilled by you giving to this project that we are going to match all of it to the tune of $500,000. And he did that not because he wanted everybody to clap for him, but he did that because he recognized that the money he has is not his, it's God's. And he was given it to manage. And I don't want to tell you that he isn't hurting or is hurting now, because that's not the point. The point is, he had made a commitment to God how to manage that money, and to everyone that attended that banquet, and he's managed God's money accordingly. I'd like to have $500,000 to manage. I wouldn't mind. But it's just as important to God if I have $2,000 to manage. And I don't know what you have in your bank account and what you don't.